Yeah. All right, so the ball is in your court now. That's
All right.
determinant.
Thank you very much, Senior, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you very much for having us here this evening. This evening, we are here to talk about determinants of the school curriculum. Determinants of the school curriculum. So, who determines what we should do as far as the school is concerned? And that is exactly why we have gathered here this evening to have this session of our radio lecture series on EDC 111, the school curriculum, social change and national development. And this evening, I'm very privileged to have my colleague, Miss Miriam Organ, to join me to do this very discussion. And so, Miss Miriam, determinants. First of all, what should our students know about determinants of the school curriculum?
All right, thank you very much, and good evening, our cherished students. Like you rightly said, today's lecture is on determinants of the school curriculum. So we're looking at certain factors or issues that influence what goes into curriculum construction, curriculum implementation, and what have you. But for purposes of this particular one, we are going to look at those issues to consider, or those factors that we need to take into consideration, especially when we want to design a school curriculum. So, i.e., emphasis will be laid on the official curriculum.
All right, thank you very much. And so, like you rightly said, this evening we are looking at the forces that or the factors that shape what must be included and what must be excluded in the official curriculum. And so, as far as this discussion is concerned, we are going to look at the determinant, as we mentioned earlier, but we will focus on the society, government policy, teachers, learners, examination bodies, financial priorities and constraints, and finally, we will look at philosophical issues as the key forces that shape what we should teach and what students should learn as far as our school curriculum is concerned. And so I want us to begin from the society and how the society influences what we teach and what students learn in the school system. Even before we start the discussion, let me announce the studio line 0503923158. We are going to do the discussion for a while, and then we will activate the phone line so that cherished viewers and listeners can equally join the conversation. The studio line that I mentioned, 0503923158, doubles as a WhatsApp line, an SMS platform, and you can equally send your views and comments and suggestions via our Facebook platform, Radio Windy Bay 98.3, and we will gladly respond appropriately. And so, Miss Miriam, we want to start with the role of the society as a determinant of the school curriculum.
All right. So, we, like you rightly said, society is a key component when it comes to development of the school curriculum. So, if our cherished listeners would recall, when we were treating the relationship between education and curriculum, we did point out that curriculum is the smallest unit around which education revolves. And so whenever we're talking about education, especially with the formal one would want to see what kind of curriculum is at play. And at the end of the day, all these are situated in the context of education. The following week, we came to this very platform on the characteristics of a school curriculum, and we mentioned that every curriculum is based on the needs of society. And so society in this case serves as a determinant of the curriculum. So when we want to develop the curriculum, we need to first of all cross-examine the society, what we would term as feasibility studies or analysis of needs or needs assessment. So it is important that, so when our students go into literature or their books, they'll realize that the preliminary stage or step in any curriculum development process is what? A cross-examination or a feasibility study. We need to study the very society that the curriculum is intended for, so that we can unearth the needs, the interests, the aspirations, and what have you of that society. And so we need to bear in mind that the curriculum exists or is designed to solve societal issues and problems. If we look at our society, Ghana's problems, Ghana's needs, Ghana's interests, they are political in nature, social in nature, economic in nature, religious in nature, etc. So it is important that we gather relevant information as far as the needs of the society is concerned. What is our interest? Where do we want to see ourselves in the next 10, 5, 15 years? Then we formulate curricular policies around it so that when learners go and study, they come back and try to provide solutions to our problems or fulfill those aims and goals that we aspire as a nation. So
all right, thank you. And so if I understand you very well, all you are trying to say is that first of all, the society is a major determinant, and in some books, don't be surprised to see the society as the first determinant of the school curriculum. And so as to whether we will change the curriculum or we will reform or revise aspect of the curriculum, it is driven by the needs of the society. And what our students have to understand is that there are instances where changes will occur in the society. And because of these changes, we have to make changes or alterations to the curriculum. It could be that it may not necessarily be in a textbook form, but as a teacher, when you are going to the classroom to give examples, and the textbook is saying that we have 10 regions in Ghana, knowing very well that we have 16 regions, you still have to make that changes at the classroom level. And so whether the classroom level or at the national level, whatever curriculum that we design, we always have to consider the needs, the changing needs of the society. So I asked the students that, so assuming we don't have, we have a coup d'etat now, and we are designing a new curriculum, would you think that we still put in the idea of teaching democracy? I'm not sure, because democracy then wouldn't be of any value. So once we are in a democratic era, that is why when students come to school, we still teach them about democracy. Until Ghana discovered oil, there was no university in Ghana that was teaching about oil and gas. But now we have oil and gas, and because of that, it has to be incorporated into the official curriculum. So whenever there is a need, a changing need, now there is ICT. Whether you like it or not, the school must teach about ICT, because that is what the society cherishes. And so as we go back to the society, we should know that whatever we are going to do is to solve societal problems. And therefore, in designing the school curriculum, you cannot take away the needs of the society. I don't know if you may want to.
I think that...
okay. Then we move to the government, the almighty government. So, Ms. Miriam, how does the government determine the school curriculum?
All right. Government policy. If we look at the nature of education that we practice in this country, everything is centralized. Government, to some extent, tends to wield some power when it comes to curriculum design, when it gets to even the implementation, because at the end of the day, they are going to initiate. Of course, society may make the call, but it is government that will primarily fund or look for sources of fund in order to begin the curriculum review process. And so government's influence when it comes to determining the curriculum cannot be underestimated. No. So first of all, we realize that especially in the campaign seasons towards a national election, we realize that the various parties, they come to our doorsteps with campaign messages. So they try as much as possible to itemize them, the promises they have under health.
Their manifesto.
Good. Under education, under agricultural sector, and what have you. At the end of the day, those things that they promise, we can talk about recent policies like free SHS. We saw it during the 2012 election campaign period, 16, 20, 2024, and what have you. We can talk about free compulsory universal basic education, talk about the double track that came into existence. I think that some of the schools are still running the double track because they haven't faded from the system.
They call it transition.
Yeah. Okay, we can talk about the school feeding program. All these things are policies that were or have been initiated by government. And our dear students shouldn't forget the most recent government policy, which has to do with the no fee stress policy. This was a campaign message in 2024, yes, that for first year tertiary students and what have you. And I'm sure our students are in anticipation, waiting for, their fees to be refunded to them, whilst others have already received it. So if we look at all these things, at the end of the day, government usually focuses on those policies that are likely to bring them to power, or those ones that are likely to sustain them in power. We are limiting ourselves to education, curriculum, school concept. So we're looking at it this way. And so government policies, all the policies that government introduced, we spoke about the free SHS, the recent how do we call it, no fee stress policy. So we don't expect that by the time government finish disbursing all these monies, our students will still complain that they have not been able to register because they couldn't pay their fees. All these things have implications on teaching and learning or curriculum issues. If the government says that we're going to pay free SHS, you cannot ask the students to go home with the reason that government hasn't brought this yet, so you have to go home. No. A new curriculum has been introduced at the basic level, standards-based common core. You can say that as for you, and I like what you said, you don't have to wait till you receive any curriculum before you become innovative. So you made a point that you can't continue teaching the old thing, saying that your curriculum hasn't been updated. Whilst on that, it is important that we take the necessary steps to make sure that we adhere. So whenever government introduces a policy, it has implications on the various schools, because at the end of the day, whether we have extra classroom blocks or not, SHS was once 4 years. You have to comply with the policy. COVID in 2020, government announced that all schools should be closed with immediate effect, and no school can say that as for me, we want the best for our students, so we'll not go. So I mean, there are a lot of policies that government introduced in education, and at the end of the day, it has a relationship or a connection to.
So a student asked me this question that, so what about the private schools? And my response, I tried to say that, yes, you may say it's a private school, but COVID gave us an example.
Yeah.
That when government announced that all schools should close down, we did not see one school that said, as for me, I'm a private school, so I'm not going to close down. So even though you are private by your name, in terms of whatever you do, it must be sanctioned by the government.
Of course.
Because that is why now all private schools, they have Association of Private Schools in Ghana, blah, blah, blah. But at the pre-tertiary level, especially for basic school, you realize that they are still managed by, or they are supervised by NASIA, National School Inspectorate Authority. Yes. Trying to tell which is a subsidiary or an agency of the Ministry of Education. So it tells you that yes, they may appear private in nature, but in a real sense, the government still has a role to play in whatever they do.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the end of the day, until recently, was it last year, that attempted suicide was treated as a mental health issue. It was a crime.
Yes.
So this world, you cannot say that it is my own life. So until recently, it was, and if you want to commit suicide, then it means that you need to be successful in that. Other than that, you could be in prison for life.
Yes.
Even though, so you can beat your chest and say it is my own life, but no. Now we are treating it as a mental health issue, so we will not go there. What I'm trying to say is that it is not about I'm a private school, So I determine what to do. Then set up that school in your house, enroll your children on
even
it.
that one,
Even that one, you are still being sanctioned.
Yes.
So the point is that we spoke about the official curriculum with our students, which we said it is also known as the written, the official, the recommended. That is what Ministry of Education has recommended for all basic schools. So if you are running a private school and it is a basic school, you are entitled to. Well, we understand that there are certain international schools, those ones that do not necessarily target citizens of Ghana as they are. Of course, we have other nationals here. So if they want to set up schools that are meant to train their children, then that is fine. They may use the other curricula like the British curricula and what have you. But we equally have some Montessori schools here or international schools here. If you have Ghanaian citizens or children as one of the people to benefit, then you have to run both or multiples of that. We will not take out, or you cannot say that you will not run the GES one. You will run the GES.
That, you still need,
in addition to the
other approval from.
Yes, the approval is there. So the point you are making is that you can say you are running a private school, so it is your own private work. If we look at the president's comment on when the 24-hour economy was launched, he made it a point that we need to incorporate the private sector into this. At the end of the day, it is about Ghana's economy and not the private sector creating a division between private and then public. Free SHS has been extended to cover private high schools. And so I think the answer you gave the student was right. Whether private or not private, this is the recommended one. They are being regulated and sanctioned by the government.
And so if you may want to know what will happen in an educational system after elections, like you said, then you have to always pick the political party's manifesto, read it carefully to understand that this is how our educational system is going to change with a new government or with an old government for that matter. But as far as the role that the government plays in our educational enterprise, we can cite many examples. Yeah. As we speak now, they are saying that colleges of education, the students will be given one hot meal. Students will not be allowed to cook at the I don't know whether they are hostels or dormitories. All these policies are coming from the government.
All right.
So government says now, instead of, initially they were fed 3
square meals
and they are giving each trainee 8 cedis. And Charles is saying that no, 8 cedis cannot feed. So instead of that, it is now just one hot meal. You take one, so where you find your supper and your breakfast.
Yeah, that is, and I think it is in line with the reform that is going on.
Yes.
The colleges are now tertiary institutions.
Yes.
So. And
so, listeners, if you are with us this evening, we are discussing determinants of the school curriculum, and this is still Radio Debate 98.3. We first started with the society as a determinant of the school curriculum, then we moved to the government, and we have said that as far as the government is concerned, the government funds schools in the country. There are instances where even in the university students will say, oh, it is our school fees that is paying you people and all that. And I tell them that, how much did you pay? And they will say 3,500. And so 3,500, the chair you are seated on, how much is that? The light, the fan. You don't pay light bill, you don't pay water bill and all that. Because government bears the cost of everything. Yes. And there is a saying that he who calls the piper calls the tune. He who pays the piper calls the tune. So once it is the government who is spending, and don't forget that mostly the government is selected by the society. So the government is also serving the interests of the society. And so the government determines what we should learn and how we should learn it and when we should even learn it. When we were in senior high school, I think a period was 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Now it is an hour. It's the government.
Yeah.
You cannot decide that, as for me, I will do mine 30 minutes. No. Now the government says we want to switch our educational system so that BEC and WASI will be written at the original date that it was meant for. Have you seen any school that has said, as for me, I will not do it? You cannot. It is the government that controls everything. Even the admission, the certificate you are going to gain is coming from a government agency, and so on and so forth. So government plays a critical role. But our listeners need to understand that the government does so through legislative acts and other administrative policies. So it's either the government goes to parliament to seek approval for some of the decision that he takes, or sometimes it may come from the Ministry of Education through the other agencies that falls under the ministry. I don't know if Madam may want to.
Oh, I think.
All right. Thank you very much. So, Madam, we talk about teachers. How do teachers determine?
This one will say, Dima. Yes, like we are doing this evening, right? Yes. So, teachers, when our students are reading, maybe they will come across things like a successful implementation of the curriculum or rest on the shoulders of the teacher. So the teachers determine, that is to say that the teachers to some extent determine the success or failure of the curriculum. And so if the curriculum will be successful, we need to involve the teachers for them to understand whatever goes into it. If they go and they don't implement the curriculum as intended, then it is likely that we may fail as a nation or a society in that line. So during curriculum development, teachers are invited, they make inputs, they have been teaching over the years, they have the experience, they have the data and the statistics, so we need to consult them. What are their views? What are their concerns? So we need to factor their concerns, their views into consideration. We shouldn't forget, like I rightly said, that the success of the curriculum to a larger extent depends on them. You give, because of the education system we practice here, it is not the teachers that determine what to teach in a way, because you are going to teach from a curriculum, and that curriculum is given to you by the Ministry of Education. And so if you don't understand everything in the curriculum, you are likely to face challenges. That is why we need to involve them in the development process. What are their concerns? What are their needs? They are going to contextualize the curriculum, or in other words, they are going to adapt it to meet their various classroom situations, so that when you ask them to conduct an experiment or make use of ICT tools, and they find themselves in schools where we have no electricity, let alone to talk of a lab with computers, they'll be able to, improvise in a way to meet the demands of the curriculum. And so if they are not in tune with the curriculum, they may neglect certain areas. It will interest you that the new curriculum has been rolled out. You go to some schools and they are still doing, some individual teachers, they are still trying to maneuver. They are finding it very difficult to transition from the old system to the new one. Of course, change doesn't happen overnight, but we need to constantly engage them so that they will be able to implement the curriculum to the letter. During the evaluation too, they are the same people that we need to consult so that they provide us with the necessary information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miriam OGAH. And so, like, you have summarized everything for our learners, that the success of every curriculum rests on the shoulders of the teacher. The government, the society may determine that there are certain things we have to teach, put them in the official curriculum, but when I get to the classroom, I will make the decision whether to teach them, especially when they conflict with my personal beliefs and ideologies. I may decide to ignore areas due to my own interest, and these things can affect the success or the failure of the official curriculum. Remember, like you rightly pointed out, they adapt the curriculum to suit local situations. There are instances you say they should teach about festivals. When they get to their villages, maybe in Ghana those days we used to select only those that we considered major festivals and major ethnic groups and all that. So if I get to the classroom and unfortunately mine community is not part of the major, I have to adapt. But would I even do it in the first place? No, I will not even do it. So that is how teachers inform or influence the design of the school curriculum. Then we come to our learners. How do learners determine the school curriculum?
All right. I believe our learners are listening to us. So they should ask themselves, how are they influencing the curriculum, or what role
what we teach, how we teach it, and when we should teach it?
Exactly. So we need to really get learners on board when it comes to developing the curriculum. Now, it is not about, there are so many ways of going about this. Either we directly engage learners, or we go into literature, try to find out what we know about learners. So we go into the various learning theories, how learners learn and all that, so that whatever we put in there will be within the level of the learner. So we can get this. How do learners feel? How do they learn? There are various developmental processes. So that is why our students will read a course in psychology of human development and learning. So relevant stakeholders who develop their curriculum will get some ideas from here, so that whatever they put in the curriculum by way of content, by way of learning experiences, will be things that will be within the level of the learner. We will again gather relevant information on how learners internalize their beliefs, their concepts, their skills, and all that. By so doing, we can create experiences that the learners will be able to practice. If we look at, for the first time that I have seen, when NACA was developing the SHS curriculum the first year, they actually moved from one region to the other and gathered some students. They put some students together from the various senior high schools, because the curriculum was meant on them, and they tried to introduce them, interview them, to see whether whatever they have put in the curriculum is within their level. So when our students go onto the NACA website, they will find relevant information, pictures, learners having roundtable discussions with the panel for each of the subject areas that were in charge of developing the curriculum. Sometimes too, as learners will be in the lecture theaters or classrooms, and then researchers will come with questionnaires or interview. It is important that, because sometimes they are based on some of these things, they want to find out the ideas about maybe a subject, a concept in the area. So we'll use this medium to reach out to our students, that whenever they are approached on issues of this nature, they need to take their time. They shouldn't just take, strongly agree, yes. disagree. No, because curriculum developers.
Yours. Can you take mine for me?
yeah. Give me yours, let me copy. No, at the end of the day, experts will chance on this on literature, because it's scientific research. And based on the thing that you were just taking, the researcher will draw a conclusion on that. And at the end of the day, curriculum developers may chance on it, because this is a study that has been done. It is not about sitting down and then praying for divination. What should we include in the curriculum? No, everything needs to be backed by data. So if you provide wrong information in these areas, we will make decisions on it which will not be to the interest of us. Same thing applies to teachers or any other individual that is asked to provide relevant information on any issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Miss Miriam. And so I think if our Facebook man is ready, you can. Okay. And so, like you rightly mentioned, as for the learners and their entry characteristics, we cannot shy away from that. Even during curriculum implementation, you still have to consider the kind of learners that you have in your classroom. So, for instance, in the university, we know that the average age of level 100s is 18 years. So you can't go to class and teach like you are teaching master students. You have to consider your learners. In the same way, like you mentioned, during design of the curriculum, we can look at the literature telling us, are they at the concrete operational stage, formal operational stage, pre-operational stage? At what age can we ask them to do factorization? At what age can we ask them to do 3-set problem and all that? These things are very important because they shape what we put in the curriculum. As a teacher, you don't determine when to go to class and all that. We said it will come from the government. The government would equally consider the kind of learners that you have.
Exactly.
Before saying that whether we should close at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 2 a.m. or 3 p.m. depends on the kind of learners that you have. A typical example is that in the university, in UEW, we close at 7:30 p.m. Lectures are supposed to start, apart from Wednesdays, they are supposed to start from 7:30 to and close at 7:30. Officially.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask a child class 1 or class 2
to start lessons
from 7:30 and close at 7:30, the child is already sleeping in the morning and he's tired before coming to school and all that. So it's not feasible.
Yeah. So I think in line with this, you see those in the early grade levels will tell you psychologists that the children can learn up to by midday.
Yes,
they are done. The rest will be
just sleeping and playing around.
Yes.
So you always have to consider the kind of learners that you have when you are designing the curriculum, when you are even implementing it, and so on and so forth. At the master's level, you can just go and share course outlines, assign topics, and say, or you can use flipped classroom and say, read on this before you come. When you come, we discuss. Because at most, you are not going to get more than 50 students in one class.
Yeah.
But undergrad, you have more than 400 students in one class. You give them material and say, oh, we are just going to discuss the time and all that. So it is the kind of learners that you have that will determine what is put in the curriculum, how it is implemented, and how it is even assessed.
Yeah, I think it is in line. The level of the learners you are dealing with. You'll recall that you and I, we were mates. So at the undergraduate level, were we ever given 3 answer booklets in an examination hall? So you are giving one, then when the need be, you call for more. But if you remember, when we were writing our master's exams, so right from the go, you are giving 3 answer booklets.
3 hours.
3 hours. One question for
fill it.
And some still demanded 4.
Yes.
Can we apply this? You take this to senior high. What are they going to write?
No,
they will draw. So the level and everything.
Is, so the entry characteristics. So you are teaching a class, you have to ask yourself, what grades did these students bring here? It will inform the kind of language that you use, your choice of examples, and so on and so forth. And so as for learners, they are very special. I always say that you may be the society, you may be a government, you may be the teacher, but the central, the consumer of the curriculum is the learner. So if you don't consider the learner when you are designing the curriculum, the probability that the curriculum will fail is very high. If you pitch it beyond the level of the learner, it may not work. If it is too below the learner, it may not work. So if you don't consider the learner, then what would you do? Because if I move from SHS to the university and we are still doing 2-set problems, I will just tell my mom I'm going back home because I'm not learning anything new. The same way, if I come here and most of the concepts being mentioned are beyond my level, I will still pack my things and go home. And that is why the learner is very, very important. Once you know your learner, so I normally say that the beginning of every good teaching starts with you knowing your learner. Once you know your learner, you will then be able to create learning experiences for them to practice what they learn. But if you don't know the learner, you may select any experience and it may not necessarily work.
Sure.
So the learner is very special. Without them, we have no work to do on campus. So sometimes learners and teachers, we say, who is more important? Between the teacher and the learner, who should we consider most in designing the school curriculum? Is it the teacher or the learner? Unfortunately, our Facebook, the internet is not functioning today, and so we are struggling. But the phone lines are activated: 0503 923158. 0503 923158. Please, as soon as you call, kindly move away a little from your radio set. Mention your name, your department, and if you have a question, a comment, or a contribution, we will gladly take them before we leave the studios of Radio Windy Bay 98.3. And so if you have just joined us, this is still Radio Windy Bay 98.3. And this evening we are talking about the determinants of the school curriculum. Who determines what we learn, how we learn it, and when we should even learn it. We are still waiting for your phone calls whilst we continue with the discussions in the studio. So, Miss Miriam, we come to examination bodies.
All right. So yes, examination bodies as one of the determinants of the school curriculum. And so to some extent, you see the nature of examinations conducted will determine what is taught from the taught curriculum our students understand.
Yes.
And then what the learners again will learn. Now, we need to look at the entry. We see various subject areas or disciplines or levels of education have their own entry requirements. So it is important that in designing the curriculum or during curriculum development, of course, at the final stage, we need to do an evaluation. So because the entry requirements, I'm sure when our students were applying, they took into consideration the fact that the minimum requirement for entry into the university, depending on the program, is about C6. So anything below C6, you may not gain admission to read the required program unless you have to, you better it, or you read a diploma, or you apply as a mature candidate, write an entrance exams and all that. So examination bodies in this country, we can identify, quote unquote, the almighty WAEC that conducts external examinations at the pre-tertiary level. Now, they have the data, they have the statistics. So whenever we want to review the curriculum, because the curriculum has continuously evolved, these examination bodies need to be invited or consulted. So the role they play during curriculum development is more of advising the panel, because those who work at WAEC have their various subject areas. So if, for example, geography, economics, history, chemistry, we have reps from WAEC to join the team for a particular subject area. Because they have the data and statistics, they are aware over the years, topics of this nature, this is how students approach the questions. And I believe we get it. Sometimes we even gather that from the chief examiner's report. So they advise, if there need be, this topic should be revised, why don't we touch on this and all that. When we move on to the tertiary level, all right, so the various institutions like UEW, we are statutory, we are a statutory institution, so we conduct our own examinations and even conduct on behalf of other agencies. So the various departments, that is why every department has an examination board, or there's an exams officer that takes care of examination related issues and all that. So it is important that during the development of the curriculum, we need to ask ourselves, if we have a duration for teaching, there's a duration for a period for exams. Like next week, for example, is the whole week is dedicated for what? Mid-semester examinations. At the end of the day, we need to constantly examine the extent to which the aims of the curriculum, the objectives have been achieved. So we cannot take examinations out. But exams here is not always about pencil and paper. Of course, it can be maybe observation, interview, like our level 400s are just returned from internship. They will be graded. Did they sit in to write any pencil and paper test? No. But so the exams you are talking about is not only about the pencil and paper. So examination bodies need to be consulted. Our students will learn from the curriculum, answer questions. WAEC even has an examination curriculum. So we need to bear all this in mind. They have implications for teaching and learning. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Miss Miriam. We are still waiting for your phone call 0503923158. 0503923158. Financial priorities versus constraints. Financial priorities and constraints. So Miss Miriam will start, and then at a point I'll come in.
All right, when we talk about financial priorities and constraints, so financial priorities, we are looking at prioritizing certain things, and versus the constraint, because we are budget.
Our needs are
yes.
In economics.
Yes, in economics, human is a word. Human needs are okay. So almost all the time,
you can never fulfill all your needs.
All our needs. So we've been asked to differentiate between our needs and our wants. So that the needs are things that we need to prioritize. Then the wants, probably we can hold on or wait for those things. All right. So we said from the beginning that government controls the national purse. We may all cry as a society that let us do something about this curriculum. But at the end of the day, it is government that is going to finance it. So they have to check their coffers or probably seek for donor support. All right. So as and when it comes in, we shouldn't forget that. Now, if we look at the trend of issues in this country, election time, we are looking for freebies. All right, things that government will promise are free this, free that. At the end of the day, they have to fulfill all those things. How much do we even have in our coffers? There are times that we go for support from IMF, World Bank, and other areas. So this is to say that when government itemize all our issues, of course, they need to prioritize certain areas or certain sectors of the economy, and education is one of them. At the end of the day, how much is going into school feeding, how much is going to free SHS, how much is going into the no fees stress policy and all that. And so equally too, we have the health sector, we have the agricultural sector. In 2020, yes, so by 2021, COVID, remember the former president made a statement that I know we know how to revive the economy, but what we do not know is how to bring back, how to bring back lives.
Okay.
So that was the time that people were actually, we had to do the contact tracing, people, precious lives were being lost. So at that instance, if you recall, that was the very point that the standards-based curriculum was introduced, and there were some complaints about the nature of workshops and other things that were conducted or done. At the end of the day, so you look at the lives that are being lost. Would you prefer committing huge sums of allocating huge sums of funds into other sectors at the expense of human lives? No. Equally too, so governments will want to embark on projects that are likely to make them popular. And so at the end of the day, as a nation, we have a tall list. Let's do them one after the other. Which one do we start with? So it's more or less like organizing them and according to the most pressing needs to.
So if you're a government and people are demonstrating on the street that they have bad roads, and you have the opportunity to choose whether to design a new curriculum or use that same money to build a road. If you're a government, what would you do?
Good. So of course, you may try to touch on the curriculum, continue pleading with them, but immediately that road, of course, we have pregnant women who travel through those roads to get to the various hospitals and all that. When investors are coming, of course, the roads and other things are other things they may look at. And so, yes, you try to balance it. That is why sometimes it appears that some of the schools are disadvantaged. Yeah, but of course, it will get there. Or it's all about prioritizing certain areas. So since government is funding, Of course, they will look at those areas that will make them popular. How many people will vote on curriculum reviews and revisions and workshops? That is what they may, okay? So, of course, they will want to say things that we, the citizens, want to hear.
Yes. So, I quite remember when this issue of 3-year, 4-year senior high school came up. People were saying that the 4 years appears to be the best for the country. But if you are to change the calendar from 3 years to 4 years, look at the amount of money that you would have to pump into the sector, because you have to expand infrastructure. You have to recruit more teachers, provide more dormitories, and so on and so forth. And so whether to do SHS 3 years or 4 years, it's a matter of priority versus constraints.
And I think that, please, are you?
Yes.
Yes, and I think that, you see, at that time, the major concerns came from parents. The reason, now that it is free, if they like, they should make it 10 years. We don't care. You will pay them and feed them. The parents raise concerns that we now have to raise money for an additional year. Had it not been that, probably I don't think that, because we all agree that 4 years is good, because technically the 3 years is not even 3 years, 2.5 years. It's only Form 1. By the time serious academic work begins, you're about getting to the third semester for some schools, third term. So the whole of Form 2 fine. Then we do Form 3 WASI registration very early. So it's like more or less we spend less than the 3 years.
All right, thank you very much, Miss Miriam Ogah. So we take our very final determinant of the school curriculum, which is philosophical issues. Philosophical issues. So we are saying the phone lines have been activated already, 0503-923158. And I think that the network is not quite, the internet is not quite stable. So our students are struggling to join us via Facebook and other platforms. I believe that it will be loaded later for them to have access to whatever we have discussed. So the last determinant that we want to talk about has to do with philosophical issues. Madam, what should our students know?
All right, so when it comes to philosophical issues, at the level we are dealing with, especially the level 100s,
we don't want to talk about idealism.
We don't mention the various philosophies we may not mention them. Realism, existentialism, and the like.
I think we have a caller. We've lost the person. Please, we are still waiting. You can phone in 0503-923158. 0503-923158. Madam, please.
Yeah, so I was saying that we may not necessarily, we will not talk about our level. It may scare them, because we just mentioned that we need to look at the level of our learners and all that. If they are interested, master's level, we'll proceed with that. But you see, philosophy is about the love for wisdom. So as a nation, what kind of knowledge, wisdom do we want to induce in our learners? So we need to philosophize. We need to think around what should be the aims of the schools that we put up, the various schools we have, colleges of education, nursing training institutions, technical universities, etc. Which programs should we read? Why should we even provide formal education at the first place? So we talk about what is the purpose of the school, what role does the school has when it comes to shaping young ones or citizens of this country. They have a role to play. So to what extent? What are their boundaries? All right. What subjects are of value? Which subjects should we study? All these things are philosophical issues that we need to think around. Then we talk about how do students learn. So there are various philosophies that surround all these. And so what methods, what materials should be used in our schools? At the end of the day, do we ask ourselves, so are we fitting our learners to fit the society? Are we educating learners so that they fit into society or they change the society? What our students also need to have teaching philosophies, student teachers, so they need to have teaching philosophies. At the end of the day, every nation or society has a philosophy that guides its education system. So one will ask, what philosophy guides Ghana's education? It can be at the various levels or various institutions. So Anna Mensa education report, all right, they came out with a philosophy that guides basic education in this country. We're talking about the creation of a well-balanced. So in the well-balanced, we have into brackets intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, physically, individuals with the requisite skills and knowledge, values, aptitudes for their self-actualization and for what? The socio-economic and political transformation of this country. There's a lot. If we look at the intellectual aspect, the emotional aspect, the physical aspect, spiritual aspect, it gives birth to the number of subjects we study. As far as intellectual is concerned, look at the programs that are mounted in this country, right from KG up to the university, so that learners will be intellectually refined. We can talk about our spiritual development. So various religions will continue to occupy their space in the school curriculum. We can talk about emotional development, social-emotional learning, sin issues, gender issues, and what have you. All these things are taken into consideration. Then we look for our physical development. And so all that we're trying to say is that every nation should have a philosophy, and that philosophy will serve as a drive, a mirror that you look into. And if you are an individual and you have a philosophy in life, of course, that is your belief. And so you are going to make sure that you are guided by that.
All right. Thank you very much. And so it is quite interesting to know that every country has its own educational philosophy, where that country wants to be, the kind of knowledge that they value, and so on, how teachers are expected to teach, and all that. This evening we have been talking about determinants of the school curriculum. Before we go, Madam will provide a short summary, and then I will come in, then we draw the curtains on the school curriculum.
All right, so to sum everything up, it has been very interactive in terms of determinants of the school curriculum. Our students have learned a lot, especially our cherished listeners, that no curriculum occurs out of the blue. We deliberately pay attention to certain key things that we need to take into consideration when we are developing a curriculum as a nation. And one of those issues, there are other ones, but we are dealing with this for our level. One of those issues is to look at the nature of society. At the end of the day, the child must be introduced to Ghanaian values. That is not to say that it is only the needs of the Ghanaian society that we need to take into consideration. Of course, globally. So we are talking about global citizenship. So we introduce the learner to Ghana and then even beyond. All right, so that at the end of the day, when the learner comes, he or she can match his colleagues in other continents. We talk about teachers, government policy, learners, philosophical issues, we just financial priorities. All these things are taken into consideration, or they need to be taken into consideration when developing a curriculum. At the end of the day, these factors, when we get to the concept of curriculum implementation, our learners will connect. They will get a connection that these same factors that serve as determinants, when it gets to implementation too, they tend to affect them. So that is something brief that I want to say about that.
Thank you very much, Miss Miriam OGAH. It has always been a pleasure coming your way every Tuesday evening, 5:30 p.m. to where we can get to. God willing, next week we are not meeting for radio lecture. Next 2 weeks, we will come to your way with another segment of our radio lecture series on EDC 111, the school curriculum, social change and national development. Thank you. Bye-bye.